So you want to decorate cookies, but you don't know where to start. I'm so glad you're here. My name's Cami Bird. I'm the founder of Iced.Kitchen, and in this video we are going to cover how to make royal icing. Now I have all the ingredients in front of me. You can tell it really doesn't take very much, though I will say my powdered sugar is significantly lacking what we need for this recipe. I'll get into that in just 1 minute. First, let's talk, what the heck is royal icing? Royal icing, alongside things like buttercream frosting, is a decorating option that bakers have that uses egg whites. That's what this is. This is meringue powder, but essentially egg whites, to create a icing that hardens on, you can put it on cookies, you can put it on cakes, and so you can definitely use egg whites for this recipe. Mine will be using meringue powder. It is shelf stable. I have probably had this too long, and it's just a little bit easier to work with, and depending on the volatility of the egg market, egg whites may be hard to come by. Now, what you're going to need for this recipe is meringue powder. Now, there are many different types of meringue powder you can use. For years, I just use Wilton's meringue powder that you can find at Michael's, Joann's, pretty much any craft store. You'll be able to find Wilton's meringue powder. Plenty of people hate on Wilton's. I don't understand it because that meringue powder always worked very well for me. Now, there are small business brands that I do prefer to support alternatively, and so if you want to find different places you can buy your meringue powder from, more small businesses, I will have that linked in the description. Outside of meringue powder, you're also going to need some warm water. I have more than enough right here, and you're going to need powdered sugar, quite a lot of it. After we whip up the meringue with the water, we are going to add powdered sugar. And this is really what helps stabilize our meringue so that we can turn it into all the fun creations you see on cookies and cakes. And then lastly here, you want to flavor it with something. Oftentimes you'll see royal icing flavored with extracts, and those are certainly really good. The big thing you want to stay away from when you're dealing with royal icing is any oil. So extracts are perfectly fine, but if you wanted to use something that has an oil based, or you have oil or grease left in your mixing bowl or whatever you're mixing with, it can spoil your whole batch of royal icing. Now, I say that, I have never had that happen, so as long as you clean things and you're just cognizant of particularly what you're flavoring your royal icing with, you will not have an issue. I do know there are professional bakers who go above and beyond when it comes to making sure that everything is clean. They'll wipe down their bowls with actual lemons, which makes sense. This is their profession. They can't just lose a batch of icing. Now, at home, it's probably not going to happen to you. Like I said, it's never happened to me. Back to extracts. So you can definitely use extracts. What gives your royal icing flavor is the extracts. Otherwise, it's just sugar and eggs. Particularly, it's just sugar, because we're gonna put a lot in here. I prefer to use dehydrated or freeze-dried rinds that are then ground into a powder. This is lime. It's lime powder. You can also get lemon powder. I had my brother make me some grapefruit powder, which I haven't tried yet. That's to come. But lime, I'm a huge lime fan. I use lime powder. When I first started baking, when I first started making these, making this royal icing recipe and putting it on the cookies that I baked, I would use lemon extract or orange extract. Whatever you have in your house is probably fine. Now, if you're thinking, I don't really like citrus, that is perfectly fine. I prefer to use citrus in my royal icing because it really cuts the sweetness. We've talked about it a little bit already. This recipe is essentially sugar and egg whites. We want to cut the sweetness. It's going to be very sweet. So again, I like to do it with citrus flavors, but you're welcome to do it with other flavors. I have made a apple cider royal icing, and I just used apple cider extract. I've made maple royal icing using a maple extract. Whatever you have on hand is going to be perfect to try with. You can also use a vanilla extract. It's not going to add too much flavor, but it will be a little bit different than using just straight sugar. Now let's get into how much we need of everything. So the powdered sugar, and why I say I don't have enough here, is you're going to need 1 pound. And I do recommend measuring it by weight and not by measuring cup. That would be, I'm blanking on the measurement. I'm usually good at this. I believe it would be 2 cups for 1 pound. Maybe you can correct me on that math, but you can also just buy a bag of powdered sugar, a 1 pound bag of powdered sugar or box of powdered sugar, and then just use the whole container. There you go, perfect. I tend to buy my powdered sugar from bulk stores, so I have 2 pound bags, or I've even had a 5 pound bag in the past. I do not need that much royal icing, and I'm sure you don't either. We are not professional bakers. That is okay. So 1 pound powdered sugar, you're going to need 3 tablespoons meringue powder. So even though when you go buy it, it is a little pricey, it lasts a long time. Like I said, I've probably had this too long. We're going to end up using 6 tablespoons water. And then for our flavoring, you always want to start off small. Start off with 1 tablespoon of whatever flavoring you're using, but you can always add more to taste. Pretty much however it tastes when it's wet is how it's going to be when it's dry. So add as much flavoring as you want. The hard part is you can't take the flavoring out. I prefer to use 2 tablespoons in this quantity when I'm using 1 cup of powdered, or 1 pound of powdered sugar. I like to do 2 tablespoons of my lime, but like I said, I like my citrus and I really like lime. So now that we have all the ingredients out, let's head to our mixer. All right, we got our mixer out and we got our whipping head on. That was a weird way to say that. We have our whipping attachment, not our beater attachment, and definitely not our dough hook, because we got to get a lot of air into this. We also still have whatever extract or flavoring we're using. We have our meringue powder, and I measured out a cup of powdered sugar, and we still got our water. What else we're gonna need is a tablespoon and also a spatula of some sort. So make sure you got that, and then let's get mixing. Get started by adding your meringue powder and then followed with your warm water. You're going to want to mix these, and at first you might find that some of the meringue powder is stuck to the side of the bowl. You can wipe that down, and you just want to get these mixed together so they start bubbling. You get some air within that meringue powder and water, and you're just going to keep mixing until you start seeing little bubbles forming, and then you're going to add in your extract and your powdered sugar. And depending on how big a recipe you're doing, if you're doubling this recipe, then you might want to add the powdered sugar a little bit at a time, but you'll see it'll come together pretty quickly, and it's almost like a soft paste, a really goopy toothpaste. And then we're going to want to really mix it on high so that we can get stiff peaks forming within our royal icing. This is, you want to take it all the way to a stiff point, and then we're going to take it back down afterwards to the different consistencies we need. So the way we're going to test this is put a knife into it, or put an object into it, and see if you have a stiff peak form. I had a stiff peak off of the beater, but I had some softer pieces within the bowl, so I just wanted to mix it and then finish mixing it all together. So you can see our final stiff peak. I'm just testing it down in the bowl. Once you have mixed everything together and you have come to a stiff peak, that's where if you stick your spatula or a knife into it, you pull it out, everything pretty much stays stiff, right? It's not folding over, it's not dripping off the whipper. Just gonna take this off. You can see how stable this is. This is not going anywhere. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the mixing bowl off the mixer, and we can kind of set this aside for now. And now you're ready to make your different consistencies for your royal icings. Now, in order to do that, This is when you're gonna make your consistencies, your different colors. I like to have a whole bunch of different mixing bowls out. When you become a real pro, you can just use one separate bowl and make all your different colors, starting with your lightest and going darkest, but I am not a pro. So I'm just gonna try and do my best getting all of this off of the little whipping beater. And when I'm done, I can separate pieces out into different bowls, and then all I do to make my different consistencies is add varying levels of water. So you'll want to get rid of your tablespoon and you'll want to pull out a teaspoon or just something smaller. And this is why I still had a whole big thing of water, because we're going to keep using that water to mix our different consistencies. And before you mix in any water, you're actually going to want to put in your food coloring. So let's go to our top-down view so I can put some of this icing into different bowls. We can add our color, and then we can get down to the right consistency. We're only making one in this video, what I call a 20-second icing, and I will explain what that is very shortly. I'm starting by dividing my mixed royal icing into 3 different bowls so I can make 3 different colors. I'm going to make red, a pink, and white. And I'm going to start off with the red. Red is notoriously a very difficult color to get to, so I use a red powder food coloring because I feel like I get a stronger red color faster with it. And so I add a little bit of that powder in, I activate it with a teeny bit of water, and I mix it in. And I will tell you that the colors shown in this video are not accurate to their in-person coloring. It's a little pinkish, a little too light of a red. And so one thing we're gonna do is cover that with a wet paper towel so that color can continue to develop. These darker colors that you wanna go for may take, you know, a couple of days to fully develop to the right strength. Next, I'm moving on to this pink. I don't have a great pink food coloring, so I'm mixing some red with a light peach. And that's why I have 2 different colors there. The reason we mix our colors first is because we're using, most of the time, a liquid food coloring, and that liquid food coloring is going to soften our royal icing mixture before we add water to it. So if we were to get our consistency to the specific one we're looking for, you can see this one's the white one. It's almost to the right consistency here. I'm adding a little bit more water so that I can get this 20-second flood icing. And what I mean by that is when you run your spatula through it, it takes about 20 seconds for it to settle. It's also the similar consistency to Elmer's blue, kind of falling off the spatula. So we achieved that right here. I'm going to do a couple more mixes of it so I can see how it's falling off the spatula. It's hard in small bits to see that. And then I'm going to move on to repeating these steps with my other 2 colors. Back to why we want to add the food coloring before we add any water to get our consistency right is because the food coloring is going to have a little bit of liquid in it, and if we add the water first and the food coloring second, we're going to have too runny of a consistency like I made right here. I made too runny of a consistency, so I have a little bit of leftover royal icing because I notoriously make my consistencies a little too runny. This is not the first time this has happened to me. It won't be the last. And so I'm just adding some stiff peak royal icing into this mixture so I can stiffen it up. Now, if I didn't have any of this stiff peak royal icing left, what I could do is just add powdered sugar. It's going to have a very similar effect. So I have 2 of my colors done, my white and my pink, and now I'm finishing up with my red. And again, I added too much water. I'm overzealous with it. Go slow when you're adding that water. This is my least favorite part about decorating cookies, is mixing the colors, mixing the consistencies. It is an arm workout, but you will be able to get it done. Once you have mixed all of your colors together, you are then ready to bag them. If you are decorating cookies with a friend, you might want to split your colors into 2 different piping bags so you don't have to fight over different colored icing. But if you are doing it by yourself, then you can go ahead and just bag them all into one piping bag. and I recommend using tipless bags. What this means is that you don't need to use tips, piping tips with these bags. Now you certainly can use piping tips with royal icing, but when you're decorating sugar cookies, it's nice to have control over how big or how small your tip is. And so you'll see on these bags, they don't have a tip on the end and they're solid, and so you cut the size that you're looking for. You can also get a variety of sizes. So here is a very large piping bag. Here is a medium size just right next to it. And then here is the small, this compared to the large and then compared to the medium. And when I'm working with different consistencies, these are all the same consistencies, so I'm probably just going to put them all into medium piping bags. But when I work with different consistencies, such as a flood and a line, I usually like to do line in a smaller piping bag, or if I have smaller hands, I might want to use a smaller piping bag. Or if I'm working on very precision work, again, smaller piping bag, it gives you a little bit more control versus this honker filled with tons of royal icing. And then once you fill them, you can tie the tops and cut the ends to the amount that you want for piping. I always recommend starting smaller and getting larger as you need it. But you are ready to decorate sugar cookies. If you are on a baking journey looking to create a new hobby out of decorating sugar cookies, be sure to subscribe so you can get notified when I drop the next video and that you can get all the videos you need associated with decorating sugar cookies. Now, if you just found this video helpful, I hope you give me a thumbs up and ask any questions that you may have in the comments below, and definitely let me know which colors you use for your cookie set or just your royal icing in general.